In this tutorial, we're going to use the vectors that we carefully constructed in the vector drawing tutorial, and we're going to look at how to model the banner that you can see here using the 2-rail sweep. So let's go to File, Close. So let's go ahead and open up an existing file. So from your Banners and Ribbons project folder, we're going to open the Banners and Ribbons vectordrawing.crv file and then press Open. Here you can see all of the vectors that we created in the previous session, and it's these vectors that we're going to use in this session to model the ribbon. Before we go ahead and create any components to model up the ribbon, we're just going to review our job settings. So to do that, let's come up to this icon here under File Operations, and we're going to set the job dimensions and the origin. Okay? And all I'm concerned with is this bottom section here. So the modelling resolution, when we originally drew up the vectors, we did so in a job that was set to standard. So we have 1,000,000 points within our job space. Now, as we're going to be creating components, I want to really up the resolution there to very high. So we've got 4,000,000 points, so we're really maximising the resolution in our model. The other thing I wanted to alter was the appearance. At the moment it's currently set to use a solid colour, this olive green colour. So here we can look at altering that, so we can look at using one of the preset options that we have in our form, or if you wanted to, you could look at applying a new texture where you simply just bring in your own image, whether that's in a bitmap form or a JPEG, and you can just add that in, give that a name and open it up, and then you can use that as your appearance. In our case, I'm going to go with one of the presets, so we're going to look at the Canadian maple option, and then we could just simply go ahead and press OK. Now, before we get to work on modelling up all of the parts to create the banner, we're just going to look at organising our vectors onto layers. So I'm going to take all the vectors that represent the rails and the cross sections, I'm just going to move them onto their own layer. So to do that, I'll simply take the rails by holding down Shift and then just selecting each one of those. Then still holding down Shift, I'm just going to box select all of these cross sections down here. We're going to right click and we'll say Move to Layer, New Layer, and we're going to call this layer the Sweep Vectors. We're just going to make that layer invisible and inactive for the moment, and then we'll go ahead and press OK. And then we'll take all of these vectors that represent the outlines for each of the folds, and we're going to right click and we use the option to move to layer, new layer, and here we're going to call this one outline. We'll make that invisible and we'll also make it inactive, and then we could go ahead and press OK. At the top here in our layers bar, we're going to change the name of layer 1 and we're going to call this one Components, and this is the layer that we're going to keep active. I can see it's active because it's bold, and when we come to create our components, all of the grayscales will be placed on this layer. Okay, so we've got our components layer, we switch on the sweep vectors and switch on the outline layer. That's everything that we've got to work with. So now we could look at actually going ahead and creating those components. So to do that, let's just go ahead and tile our windows horizontally, and then we'll go over into the Modelling tab. So before we create any components, let's just right click on the name level 1 and we're going to rename that, and we're going to call this level Folds. Anything that I create now will be added into the Folds level. So we're going to start by looking at modelling up each of the folds, and the way that we created our vectors was in a way that we'd use the 2-rail sweep tool to create these shapes. So let's go over into the 2-rail sweep form. And so to create components using this tool, we require 2 rails and a cross section, and you'll see that we have a series of rails and we have a series of cross sections that we drew up in the previous tutorial. Okay, so we'll start by looking at the main first fold here. So first off, we need to select our rails, so we'll select this rail here, hold down Shift, and we'll select this rail here. Then we'll use this option here to use selection. So straight off I can see that our red rail, the start point is at the top here, and the cross section will flow down because the arrows are telling me which direction the cross section will flow down that rail. The rail on the right hand side, this green one, the start point is at the bottom and the cross section would flow up the rail. So in order for this to work correctly, we need them going in the same direction. So to do that, we can simply right click on one of the rails and use this option here to reverse the rail. So now we have start points at the top and both of the rails are traveling in a downward direction. Okay, so now the rails are okay, we can then go ahead and select a cross section. So we're going to look at using this cross section here. And this cross section is going to be swept between the two rails in order for us to create the Z height of the model. And then later on we'll ultimately look at cropping the result of the shape from the two rail sweep to the actual shape of the banner. Okay, so we're just going to undraw all of these options in here. We're going to give this a name and we're going to call this one Fold 1. Set the combine mode of that to merge and then we can simply go ahead and press apply. Okay, and so there is our component, and if we just tilt that over we can see the shape of our cross section here in the 3D view. Okay, so put that back in Z and then we'll just close out of the two rail sweep form. So the next step is we need to take this component and we need to crop it to the vector outline that represents the first fold. So to do that we simply select our component first, hold down shift, select the vector that we want to crop it to, then over in the modeling tools we've got this option here to clear area of selected component outside selected vectors, and this basically works like a cookie cutter. And so when I click on that it will clear everything outside of the vector till we're left with the shape that we are looking for. Okay, and we can see the first fold very visible here in the 3D view. Right then, so let's move on and we'll look at creating fold number 2. So that's this area here. So again, to do that we need to go into the two rail sweep tool and then we'll go ahead and look at selecting these two rails here. So we'll select the first, shift and select the second, and then use this option to use selection. Okay, so here I can see the start points for both the rails are in line with each other, and we can see the direction that the cross section will flow, and that's down on both of the rails, so that's okay. So now all we need to do is select our cross section, which is this vector here that I've got selected, and then we'll just undraw sweep between spans, and then we'll give that a name and we'll simply call that one Fold 2, set the combine mode of that to merge, and then we could go ahead and press apply. And so if we take a look up the Y, we can see how that looks there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And so at this stage, I'm actually fairly confident that the vectors are set up correctly. So we're just going to move on and create the next two folds, and we'll look at cropping all of those components afterwards. So let's use this option here to start a new component. So this time we're looking at this vector rail here, hold down shift, and we're going to use this rail here as we're looking at this fold. We're going to use the option to use selection. Again, start points are in line with each other, and I can see the cross section is traveling the same direction as each of the rails. Then we could go ahead and select our cross section. In here we're just going to give that a name. We'll call this one Fold 3. Press apply, see the result of that. Start a new component. This time we're going to select this rail here, shift and select this rail here, use selection, select the cross section, so it's this last cross section that we've got there, give that a name, we'll call that one Fold 4, press apply, and then we'll simply close out of the form there. And so now we can look at cropping all of those components back to the outlines of each of the folds. So we'll start by selecting Fold 2, I'm going to hold down shift and we're going to select this vector here, come over and then use the option to clear everything outside the vector. Okay, so you can see that shape there. So you're starting to see the banner actually coming through here in the 3D view. Then we'll take this large shape here, shift and select this fold here, back over, and we're just going to clear everything out. We can see that there. Then we'll look at the final fold, so we'll take that grayscale, hold down shift, select the vector, and we'll clear everything outside. So now we can really see the banner shape here. And if we take a look at the y-axis, we can see the cross sections actually being shown through the z height of each one of our parts. So starting with the main fold, you can see it's coming down, tapering down as it meets the second fold, just as it does here in the vector. And then as it gets to the second fold, you can see that component is swooping down, it's swooping back up again, just like our vector is over here. And then as that meets the third fold, you can see it's swooping down and back up, just like we can see here. And then as we get to the fourth fold, it's completely coming up above and back on itself as it swoops down, just as the vector is shown here. And so hopefully this makes more sense into how the two-rail sweep works. And so the same technique can be used for any model that has this type of flow and folds in. For example, flags, linen folds, and banners for heraldry pieces. And there's lots of applications that we can use this for, and this same setup of vectors will work for that. It's just about the amount of folds that you have that will make it more or less complex. So to finish off, we're going to look at using the sculpting tools to smooth and smudge the folds into each other to really give it more of a finished look. Once we've done that, we're going to look at creating a copy of the set of folds that we've got on the left over to the right hand side to complete the banner. And before we do any form of finishing, we're just going to look at creating a new level in our component tree. We're going to right click on the folds level, insert a new level. We're going to right click, we're going to rename that level, and we're going to call it the banner level. So now what I want to do is I want to create a component based on what we can see here in the composite model. So to do that, I simply come over to this icon here to create a component from the visible model, and you'll see that it's added a component to my banner level. If I undraw the visibility of the folds level, you can see it's just one component that represents all of those folds. And so the nice thing about this is that I can edit this component and I still have access to all of the individual parts that make up the left-hand side of our banner. So let's go ahead and just minimize the folds level. And now we can look at taking our component and we'll go into the sculpting tools just to really finish this off. Let's maximize the 3D view. So the first operation is looking at smoothing the edges of our ribbon. So we're just going to look at following the lines of each one of the folds to just soften them up. One thing we need to be mindful of is that we don't alter the state of the right hand side here, and the reason for that is that we're ultimately going to be taking the left side of our ribbon and we're going to create a mirrored copy over to the right hand side, and so we want to make sure we have a nice seamless transition between the two components. So we're going to leave this area completely unadjusted. So as I said, we're going to start using the smooth. So we're already in the smooth tool here. So here we have options to control the pen, so we can alter the diameter and we can alter the strength of the smooth. So I can look at altering the diameter using the slider, or I could look at adjusting that using the arrow keys on the keyboard. So if I use the right arrow key, we can increase the diameter, left arrow decreases. So we're just going to go somewhere around 150, okay, so something like that seems okay. Strength, we're just going to really decrease that down, somewhere around 10, 12 seems okay. And then we're just going to go around and I just simply click and then just follow the shape of the outline of the ribbon. And you can see that with every turn make, we're really just smoothing the edges off there, so it's just really softening the sides of the banner. Okay, we'll go along the bottom here. Again, remember I don't want to touch the right hand side here, so I'm just going to leave it somewhere around here, and then you can just go over that again just to apply extra smooth there until you're happy. Okay, so I like the smooth that we've got there, and now we can focus on how we can better blend the folds into each other, and we can do that using the smudge tool. Before we go into the smudge tool, I just really want to focus on the folds area here. So if we go into our twiddle view, and then if I press both the left and right mouse key down and move over to the right, you can see I'm able to pan my view. And then using the scroller of my mouse, I'm able to zoom in. Okay, so I'm just going to make that more central just so I can really see what's going on here. And then what we can do is we can go into the smudge tool. And so the smudge tool enables us to pull and push material as if it were virtual clay. Now before we go ahead and make any changes with this tool, I'm just going to use the keep option here, and that's just going to accept the changes that we've made to the model already, so all of the smoothing that we've applied there. And so when I come to use the smudge tool now, if I get to a stage where I feel that I want to revert back to this stage, I can just use the discard option and then it'll bring me back to this state. Okay, so all we have to do is alter our diameter. So we've got a large diameter here, so I'm just going to bring that down using the left arrow key. Okay, so that's a good size there. Strength, that should be okay at 30. If I wanted to adjust it as I'm sculpting, then I can go in there and change that afterwards. So we'll start by looking at this fold here, and so the idea is we're going to pull this fold into the fold underneath. So here we're just going to click and pull, click and pull, and just follow the curve of the ribbon like you can see there. Okay, click and pull until it starts to come round. Then we can move that out to the left a little. That's not bad. We can push that in, alter that there. We can also look at using the undo brush. We may have done a little bit too much, so it's interfered over here. And then we could look at using the smooth tool just to soften that change over here. Okay, so that's good. I like that there. Go back into the smudge tool. Over here we're going to do the same, so we're going to click and pull until we bring that round into the bottom fold here. We'll do the same over there, click and pull and click and pull to bring it round. Now if you didn't like what you'd done there, you can use the undo brush and we'll just undo that, and then we'll just try again. Okay, so back into the smudge, and then we can just click, pull that down until it starts to blend in to the fold underneath. Okay, so that's not too bad there. Use the undo brush and we're just going to undo this area here, use the smooth tool, and we'll just look at softening that blend in between the two there. And then what we can do is we can look at the twiddle and just take a look at how all the folds are blending into each other. Okay, so that's not too bad. I like what I've got over here. I may just tweak with the left side here, so let's just use the Z option there, and then we'll just pan our view across, and again we'll just zoom in over here. And as I like the changes that I've done here, I'm actually just going to keep them, and then we'll go back into the smudge tool, and then we can look at pushing this area out over here. And then we'll go back into the smooth tool, we'll just soften that edge there, and I think I'm happy with what we've got. So let's just use the twiddle tool, just zoom out slightly, take a look, we can see all the folds blending in to each other, and that's not bad. So let's put that in Z, use the keep option, and then we're going to press OK to come out of the sculpting tools. So the last thing that we need to do is create a mirrored copy of the component that we've got here. So to do that, we're going to take the component, we're going to go into the mirror tool, we're going to flip that horizontally about the job centre, and we're going to create a mirrored copy. And then we'll use that option there, and that will create that copy over to the right hand side. And then we'll just select both of the components there, right click and alter the combine mode so that they're blending in with each other. So we'll set that to merge. And so you can see through the centre of the banner there, we have a very nice smooth transition. And so to finish the whole banner off, we're just going to look at applying a smooth filter over the entire part just to soften the edges that run through the centre there. So to do that, let's go into the modelling tab. We're going to take both of those components, hold down Shift, and then use the smooth filter. The software is going to warn me that the component must be baked before we edit it. That's okay, I'm happy to do that. Okay, so in here we can look at applying the smooth. So I can use the slider here, we'll just put that somewhere around halfway, maybe just a little less there. Okay, and that's not too bad, that looks good. So I'm happy with that, so we'll go ahead and bake the current smoothing, and then we'll simply just close out of the smooth components form. Then we'll just go into the modelling tab, and we're just going to take our component, right click, rename that, and we're just going to simplify this to banner. And there we have the complete banner that was created based on all of the different folds there. Now if you're interested in this design, then there are lots of different variations of this theme, where there is lots of ribbons and banners available with the free clip art that comes with the software. You can import them as standalone models from the clip art tab, or you could open the CRV 3D files for them so you can look at the vectors to how they were made. So let's go and save this file. So we'll go to File, Save As, and then we'll just call this one Banners and Ribbons 3D Modelling. Press Save, and you can access that from the project folder.